Hi guys, welcome to our second story. Last week we talked about Jesus walking on the water with Peter. Today we're actually going to go from the water and we're going to go up a mountain. I love walking up mountains. In fact, this t-shirt I'm wearing today, I actually got this 10 years ago in 2010 because I walked up three of the highest mountains in Wales in 15 hours with a group of my friends from school. I've walked up the highest mountain in Wales. I've walked up the highest mountain in England called Scafell Pike. And hopefully one day, I hope to walk up the highest mountain in Scotland. There's lots of mountains mentioned in the Bible. Moses got the 10 Commandments from Mount Sinai when he climbed up Mount Sinai. Elijah defeated the prophets of Baal on a mountain called Mount Carmel, where he actually called fire down from heaven and burned up water. But the mountain we're going to talk about tonight is a mountain that was climbed by Jesus. Although Moses and Elijah do make a brief cameo appearance. The story is called the Transfiguration of Jesus and is found in Matthew chapter 17. We're getting close to Easter, and this story is set just before Jesus begins his journey to the cross. Earlier on in Matthew 16, Peter realizes who Jesus actually is. And then, for the first time to his disciples, Jesus explains to them there's going to come a point when he's going to have to die. And this story is Jesus showing three of his disciples who he really is. Our story begins with Jesus choosing Peter, James and John, who were both brothers, and they walk up a really, really high mountain. When they were there, Jesus suddenly transformed in front of their eyes. Now, this word transfiguration is a really, really long word. And it's really hard to understand. But it means the same as another really, really long word, which is metamorphosis. And the best way to think about it is a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Now, can I just clarify for all those people who are thinking that I suddenly called Jesus a caterpillar? I didn't mean it like that. What I mean is, inside a caterpillar, although it looks ordinary, it's got that potential to be that wonderful butterfly. And when it changes into the butterfly, it shows its true potential. That's what Jesus was doing with those three disciples. He metamorphosized, he changed and showed them, just for a brief moment, who he really was. Because they went up with him to the top of the mountain, and there before their very eyes, suddenly his face shone like the sun. His clothes became white, even better than the best washing powder, even better than Daz and Bold. His clothes turned and they shone with a white light. And then, if that wasn't enough, suddenly our two characters that we mentioned earlier on, Moses and Elijah, appeared and started talking to Jesus. Can you imagine again what those three disciples must have been thinking? Peter was there, and we know from last week that Peter was always one to rush in. And again, suddenly, Peter says, I know, this is really good. Let's build some tents. Now, when you're faced with Jesus in all his glory, and then Moses and Elijah, the first thing that springs to mind isn't, let's build some tents. But that's what Peter said. He said, let's make some shelters. Let's stay here. Let's remember this moment. But just as he was kind of coming to his senses, a bright cloud came over the disciples, Jesus, Moses and Elijah. And they heard a voice, and this voice says, this is my dearly loved son, who brings me great joy. Listen to him. And they realized it was the voice of God speaking over Jesus. The disciples fell on their faces, really just in fear and in worry and just amazed at what they were seeing. Jesus touched them and he said, get up. Don't be afraid, it's me. The disciples stood up, and Moses and Elijah, they'd gone. Interestingly, Jesus told those three disciples, don't tell anyone what you saw here until I've died and rose again. And do you know they listened to him? Because Peter, later on, after Jesus had died, after he had rose again, and when Peter was travelling, telling people the good news about Jesus, he wrote a letter. And in one of the letters, he actually refers this time, he speaks about being on the mountain and seeing Jesus in all his glory. It's an amazing story again, just like the story last week that we talked about Jesus walking on the water and showing his power there. It's another amazing story where just for a glimpse, just for a moment, 3 normal men, 3 disciples saw Jesus as he really was, glowing and bright and shining. Moses and Elijah were there because Moses represents the law. And Elijah represents all the prophets. And Moses and Elijah were there because Jesus was showing those 3 disciples that he had come to our planet. He had come to fulfill all that, to do everything that the law says, and to all the promises that the prophets had made all through the Old Testament about him, that he was going to fulfill them. And he was sure he was there standing in front of them. And you know, when we think about life at the moment, and we think about what we're going through at the moment, Jesus can reveal himself in the same way. Sometimes when we pray to Jesus, we can think of Jesus as being our friend, which is brilliant. And we can think of Jesus as being there to help us, which is brilliant. But then sometimes Jesus just reveals himself to us. And he seems to shine, and he comes alive in our hearts and alive in our minds. And we realize, oh my gosh, I'm praying to the Son of God, not just to anybody, actually to the Son of God. And we realize who he is. And we think of all the darkness at the moment in the world with all these problems, all these worries. We think of everything that's going on. Can you imagine the light of Jesus shining into all our worries and all our darkness and all our problems and just making everything bright and whiter than white? I want to think about lots of things this week. I want you to think about lots of things this week. I'm muddling over my words now. Next week, we're going to look at Palm Sunday. And what I would like you to do, if you can, I want you to make some palms. Now, these are not palms. This is the palm of my hand. A palm is like a long leaf, okay? Now, I know we're all in isolation and lockdown, but we can get some toilet roll tubes, something like that, stick some green paper on it, because we're going to do the story next Sunday of Palm Sunday. And there'll be a point where we're going to have everyone, I'm going to say, right, wave your palms now. I don't mean jazz hands. Wave your palms now. And you're going to get your palm leaves and you're going to wave them like the clappers. I'm going to make some palm leaves as well. Okay, I'm going to ask Rebecca to remind me to make some palm leaves. And then we're going to wave them like the clappers at that point when we're talking about the story of Jesus. Okay, so thanks very much for listening again. And I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.